All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. This is On the Grind. I'm your host, Chirag T. Patel, and the T is very important. We're bringing it to you live from the fourth biggest tech hub in America, Atlanta Tech Village. This episode is brought to you by Tommy Run, an on-demand app that delivers construction materials to your location anytime, anywhere.
Trips off-site or slowing down your project and making it harder to do quality work. Tommy Run delivers construction materials to your job site on demand. Download the app, order your supplies, and we deliver to your site within hours. No interruptions, maximize productivity, quick and direct. Download Tommy Run and get more real work done.
All right, today I have the former music executive who was instrumental in shaping the careers of Atlanta-based hip-hop group Goody Mob, Dungeon Family, and Organized Noise. He is 1/3 part of the music group Culture Republic that fosters technology and brand management for the new generation. Culture Republic is responsible for cultivating artists such as T.I., Ludacris, 2 Chainz, Travis Scott, Iggy Azalea, and Outkast. Today, he is the founder of Tommy Run, a technology company that delivers construction materials on demand. Please help me welcome Bernard Parks Jr. Bernard, welcome to the show.
What's up, man? I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So, Bernard, when I was preparing for this show, I had to Google you, right?
Yeah,
so,
not much hope.
you're like a very behind the scenes type of person, but like you had such a big impact on not just people, but like, company wise. And when I was even asked a couple people, right? And before we get into the interview, I just want to ask you, like, if this is a true story, did you have a chance or the opportunity to meet Biggie and Tupac?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, I did.
Can you tell us about that story?
Well, I mean, it was separate times, so they weren't together.
What happened? Like, just quick. Because that, for me to even know somebody that was in their presence, like, I don't come across people like that every day. And when I found that out, I was like, man, that's kind of legendary.
Yeah, well, it's kind of telling my age, too, at the same time.
All right.
But it's all good. Early on in my career, there was a guy that I'm very good friends with now, Big John. Shout out to Big John. He's the head of Warner Chappell Music now. But Big John, we were early on in our careers, and Big John introduced me to Tupac. He brought me by the studio one night, and it was me and Goody Mob and that kind of stuff. And we went and hung out.
Wow. Did he come to Atlanta or you went to LA?
No, we went in LA. Yeah,
wow.
We went in LA. It was a show that we did. We did a show at the House of Blues. The night after House of Blues, we finished a show at the House of Blues, and we went over there to holler at Tupac. And it was all from there, just a great relationship.
Amazing. Like, you know what I'm saying? I can just imagine that being in that moment, that time frame. But so getting back to you, let's take it back to your early days, right? Mm-hmm. Tell us, where you grew up, what city you from?
Born and raised Southwest Atlanta, man, in the Swats. Yep.
Word.
Yep. I'm a native here. Been here for a long time.
What's the like when you were growing up? What did your parents do, or like did you start out with entrepreneurial business from a lemonade stand to like paper routes? I
was always an entrepreneur. My father was an attorney and my mother worked for the state. She later on went to law school and graduated law school the same time I graduated from high school. But I never actually wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't realize how much influence my parents had on me, specifically my father, too much later on. But there was another person who had a little bit of influence on me, really a lot, and his name was Mac Wilbur. He owned McDonald's. So he was one of the true entrepreneurs that I knew at an early stage that was able to move and live a lifestyle that I really kind of looked up to. Mm-hmm. And then there was my next door neighbor, which was a different relationship, and his name was Buddy Gloss.
And he had his own business as well?
Yeah, he did.
So did you go to college to study law? Or
no, I never went to school to study law. I was actually forced to go to school. But no, that's a whole different story. I wanted to go to Hamburg University because once again, I didn't want to go to a traditional school. Mac Wilburn went to, I guess it was like Hamburger University
Right.
or something that you needed to go to in order to own your own McDonald's.
Yeah, with the training.
Yeah, the training and all that kind of stuff. So he talked to me about it, and that's really what I wanted to do. But my parents were more interested in me, going to a traditional 4-year college. So that's what I did. I started out at Morehouse, and I was at Morehouse probably for about a semester or so, and then I transferred over to Clark.
Okay.
And I spent a couple of years at Clark.
And then when you got out, did you work in
I
corporate
didn't finish.
America?
No,
Okay.
I never worked in corporate America, and I didn't finish. I stopped
So
going.
what was the turning point? Like, all right, so you're in college, like you were just like, you know what, this ain't for me, like, because I know a lot of people like that. Because you know what, some people just are not, read books, take tests. Some people excel at that, but some people are like, just you show me one way, and I can just go.
I'm a lot more hands on and like to think outside the box. My family would say I like to push the envelope a little bit, right?
Right.
And so, but my father always taught me that. He also taught me how to think like a lawyer, right? So he would challenge me a lot through my thinking process. And so based off of that, I think that's what gave me the tools to be able to do a lot of things later on. Because he gave me the basis of business, and he gave me the basis of the legal formation of business and how it operates and how it flows.
Okay.
So from that, he always knew that I had an entrepreneurial spirit, so he was teaching me how to go and look up properties early on, like in real estate and all kinds of things. So he helped me at one point develop a dry cleaners business. And
Really?
So that's where, I kind of started to where that was really my entry into really trying to figure things out was through this dry cleaners and transportation.
So that was like your first business that you officially ran, or in the real estate?
Yeah. From that perspective, I would say it was my first structured thing to understanding customer service and so forth. And that was one of the things that I realized early on was customer service wasn't what I wanted to do.
Absolutely.
Right. I learned that quick. People would show up at 7 o'clock for their cleaners, and I'd be showing up at 8:30. Right. I had a meeting this morning.
I picked up my clothes.
But no, it was a fun experience. I learned a lot, and I worked with my friends throughout that process. And so, it was just a hands-on thing.
And what'd you do with the dry cleaner eventually? Did you still own it, or?
No, I got rid of it, man. Listen, I got rid of that long time ago. It was actually throughout the period when I decided to move into music.
Okay. Let's talk about that transition, because you and I don't know much about. I just know that you were had the hand in working with Goody Mob, worked with Organized Noise, Dungeon Family. How'd you get into that? How'd you even meet them and then you managed them, right?
Yeah, well, we were friends before. There were a couple of the guys that I was friends with before. There were a couple of guys that were younger that I met, throughout that process.
Right.
I dabbled in and out. My parents, once again, my father more so, he worked with a guy, David Franklin and so forth, who was in the music business. Can't remember the other, Phil Ransom.
Okay.
He was an attorney that was in the music business, and my father knew. So there were a couple of people, and in the music and the entertainment business was always thrived in Atlanta, right? The entertainment lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So, that's really where my first intro to it started. But then subsequently, while I had a dry cleaners, it was a strange story. A friend of mine, he came by and he said, "Man, have you heard of this group?" And started talking to me about them.
And that's Goody Mob.
Well, yeah. Well, no, in actuality, it really wasn't Goody Mob at that time. It was Outkast. Because Outkast was first.
Right.
Right. And so Outkast was the group that came out first that made me pay a little bit more attention to what was going on. And
that's probably like, because I think Outkast's first album came out in 1994, right?
Yeah, 94. Well, no, 95 is, I think, when the album actually came out, but they introduced Southern Playlist. They introduced Players Ball in 94.
Right. So, so you're in the studio, you're bringing different types of music. How that connection, go about or make it?
There's a friend of mine, Willie Knighton, who was Cujo. He was a part of the Goody Mob, and I started basically courting him the same way you would do any, sports athlete, entertainer, and was telling him, what I could do for him on the management side, and we spent time going through that. And he eventually believed me, and he carried me to back to Rico, who escorted me out of the building the first time. And Rico, he had a lot of support. He had a lot of love. He was very supportive. I mean, I could tell you now that I would not have been in that position without those two guys.
And then when you and then eventually, I'm assuming, did you work with Goody Mob like full time?
Yeah, full time. I mean, from the beginning to the end, I was out. With Rock.
What was your role with them? Like, how'd you help them? What, like, you managed them?
I managed them. I handled everything from you name it. I mean, it was full-time management. Yeah. So,
because I remember when Goody Mob had the album Still Standing in 1998.
Yep.
That's when I feel like, I think they had another album before that, but like
Soul Food,
right,
was before that.
But then my time frame, like when I was
Still Standing.
You're right. That was the album. I was like, man, because I'm
it was a big album. I think for all of us. Right, okay. It was an important album. Yeah, for sure.
That was I think
it was a classic piece of work.
Yeah. Are you able to talk about like any stories, like your time on the road, like any interesting things that happened during that time? Because I think like from '98 was probably one of the biggest hip hop years of all time. Especially if you look at the different albums that dropped, from DMX to Jay-Z to Outkast to Goody Mob, like even Cash Money had their Lil Wayne. That was an instrumental year.
You say when the Southern Takeover took over? What did you say?
Yeah, what? Tell me about that.
No, I'm only talking mess, man. I'm saying is that, the earlier year was much about East and West, right? And so the years that you're talking about, to me, is when Southern hip-hop started really dominating and started growing.
Yeah, and then Aquemini came out, which is probably one of the most classic albums ever.
Absolutely.
So during that time, right, you got into the music. Recently, I think this was last year, I read the article about Culture Republic. Yep. You, Shaka Zulu, Jason Jeter, my bad. Yep. Started this company called Culture Republic, and from what I know, you're managing artists, but also doing brand management and introducing technology into it. What is that all about?
It's a mixture, right? But more importantly, what we wanted to do was show that three brothers could come together and do business, right? Okay. And it ain't easy. So, especially when you turn around and we all have different lifestyles and, and work in our own silos. And what I like to say a lot of times is that, we're all chiefs in our own space. Right. So to come together, we thought that was important. And what we were saying is that, unfortunately, with where, to me, urban music is now, they don't have the mentorship that we had. Mm-hmm. The departments were full. You had, urban departments. Now you don't have that anymore. Things are gone. So to me now is like some of the mentorship in understanding where and how to cut deals and do things is missing from the industry.
More and like consultative type.
Yeah, I hate to date myself, and I like a lot of the guys now, like like Migos. I've grown to respect them a lot, right? It took some time in the beginning, but I've really, really been able to respect those guys and where they are, along with a couple of others. Some of my things that I gravitated towards first would have been the Kendrick Lamar's. But in coming back though, I'm saying is that now the Migos and a lot of those guys to me have actually turned into stars.
Right. They're huge.
Yeah, but a lot of times for me is that the records were big, the artists were big, but they weren't stars. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think is that that's the difference to me from, somewhat of what I would consider be, a lot of the older music now compared to a lot of the music that I see today. Because me and my son, I have a 20-year-old son who's at Howard, and we have big discussions about that, right? Right. About, who's what and how the music industry moves.
Like more new era.
Well, yeah, right. He's new. Well, what's interesting, he's new era and he's old, right? Like he goes back and listens to Biggie, Tupac, he's a big fan of a lot of was crazy. The other day he was talking about a UGK song or a Scarface song, right? So I think is that good music kind of hangs around. Mm-hmm. But what I also talked to him about was the star power, right? Which is something different to where I feel very few cats have that. You know, a lot of them have hit records but don't have the same star power.
Absolutely. So as far as Culture Republic goes, if you guys sign artists?
We sign artists and we work with artists through our Epic distribution deal. Okay. But we also mentor. That's how we started getting even, you know what I'm saying, off in the tech, you know, talking about tech. Because we want to know now to attract people in entertainment space, you know, you kind of need to do a little bit more than what the traditional side of record labels were.
Right. Okay. Well, let's talk about technology because right now you're the founder of Tommy Run, which is a technology company in construction, right? Tell us, I want to know the whole story because like when I first heard about Tommy Run, I thought it was a genius idea because like, you know, in my past, I used to work with construction clients, right? And when I found out that you guys do on-demand delivery to construction sites, I thought that was a game changer, right? And I don't know anybody else doing it besides you guys and, you know, starting right here in Atlanta, which is awesome. Can you tell us the story from the beginning? Like, how'd you even come up with the idea and then get it to where it is today?
It actually started with an idea when I was building a house on Madrona Street. That was in the middle of the hood.
Your own house?
Well, it wasn't my own house. I was building it for a friend of mine, right? Okay. It's real weird, right? So, but the bottom line is that I started building this house, and once I started the building of it, I started realizing how inconvenient it was to go back and forth to construction sites and stores and supply houses, different times that you needed materials. And I thought that was something that had some traction.
What year was this when you were building the house?
15.
Okay, so 2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's 2015. That I started working on this house. I think I may have worked on the house for a year because I was actually building the house out of my pocket. It was one of those things to where it was a challenge. And it was a challenge because what I believed was that, you know, there was a demand for better quality housing and affordable housing in underserved communities. So, you know, traditionally we have been redlined on the south side of town. So if you look at the south side of town, you don't have good services, you don't have, you know, restaurants, bars, a whole bunch of things, right? Grocery stores. And so subsequently those areas ended up being run down. And the people who could afford nice moved out, right? But now what you're seeing is with the gentrification and things happening in the inner city, that people are coming back and moving into those areas. And I think is that the other part about it was that they raised great families in those communities. So I wanted to go in and start building within those communities. And as building, I realized that there was a void there, and it was for construction materials to be delivered on sites.
So you were a builder too.
Oh, yeah.
You were building the home.
Yeah, man. That was the whole thing. Hey, man, that was that. You know, I'm an entrepreneur, man. You know, I'm a serial entrepreneur, seriously. Right.
Because by now you did music, you had dry cleaners.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, I mean, I wanted to do development. Yeah. You know, I wanted to build houses. I mean, really, I thought that was my passion because even while in the music business, I always bought property and sold property. I mean, my mother always taught me about real estate. I mean, she was the first person to help me actually get a house at a young age. So she influenced me on what the value was about with real estate. And so I always played in real estate and I understood it. It was raw to me. It was also creative, right? Because you got a chance to look at something and imagine what it would be and work on it. So it was a stable footing for me, and it was natural once slowing down with music to start doing development as well as doing construction. But I never built a house on my own.
So when you were building the house, you had a team?
Nah, I went and got blueprints.
By yourself?
Yeah, no, I did it all.
Get out of here.
No, I did. I mean, that's how a friend of mine, BJ, ended up being my partner and the founder with me.
Uh-huh.
BJ had much more construction experience. I actually knew him from the music industry. I didn't know him from construction. I mean, he came down with Bob Whitfield when Bob came down and they opened Patchworks. Mm-hmm. And so we met in the early stages of Goody Mob and Organized Noise Recording. And he also promoted parties and did a bunch of things. And so subsequently later on, as I was making a transition and talking about construction, some kind of way we started talking about construction. And I learned he did construction and graduated from Stanford. I didn't know neither, right? I was like, man, you didn't drop out like me. So no, but that was cool. So BJ was a balance for me because he's very structured, right? Yeah. But so
it's a good team combo.
So yeah, it was a good team combo. And another friend of mine was giving me all kind of problems with construction because I wanted to build. Mm-hmm. And so I just felt like it wasn't rocket science. I mean, you need to have a better plan and start building. So I talked to some guys that would do, the framing and BJ, and then we talked to some plumbers, and, I went through that whole process.
And when you were on the construction site, now you're like, you know what, I got to get some more 2x4s or whatever, right?
Yeah, so I would always run and go and get those materials myself.
How much time was taken out of your schedule from building the home to actually running and getting these materials?
Enough for me to want to come up with an idea not to do it anymore, right?
I'm just imagining you on the construction site, and I'm like, okay, man, now I got to go. And how far is your closest Home Depot?
The Home Depots were convenient. Mostly your supply houses were further out. Uh-huh. And what was interesting for me was when I would talk to BJ always laughed because he's like, man, you actually have the luxury of being able to go out and do it because you're building this house basically as a hobby. Like you're trying, you're experimenting right now. So because you're experimenting, you have time. And he would also laugh because the guy who I was actually working with and I was building the house for, everybody was on my time period. I didn't have to, because I didn't have a loan and they had not paid me for the house. So my position was when I got finished,
whatever.
Yeah, I got finished, right? And everybody had to be patient. So, it was a luxury of learning. And so when doing that, that's how it all came about. Because I would run back and forth. And so BJ said, just imagine, Bernard, if you had a contract and you were doing hard money loans and, when you lose a week or you lose 2 weeks, that's real money, right? So you don't have those luxuries. Yeah. And because my position was what I wanted to check with them about was to see if my pain was his pain. Okay. Because he was an experienced builder.
Right.
Then I called another friend of mine who did production houses, right? He was doing 100 houses a year. And I was like, man, how do you deal with this?
Right.
And he was like, nah, you don't. Like,
you just go. I gotta go. I gotta go get this stuff.
It was just the norm of the construction business. Yeah. And it made me dive more into it and understand the value of time.
So I'm assuming just like a small project like a house. Now you're talking about big construction projects, right? It's probably gonna take you an hour. Just get your materials.
Bare minimum.
Bare minimum, right? Especially in traffic, whatever, right?
Yeah, you got to shut down. You got to move. You got to work stoppage. Because sometimes that's what people will ask you. Well, if I pay a guy and he's making $15 an hour and I send him to the store, it's probably cheaper. And I'm like, yeah, if you look at it like that, but that just means that you're not an efficient builder, right? Because you're only thinking one step ahead and not 2 steps. Because if you think about it from that perspective, you only think about the time that the guy's gone, but he's generally going to be gone an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Absolutely.
Right. And then the productivity at the job slows down because you lose a guy. That's money. It's all types of things. It was interesting. I talked to one guy one day and we were going through. He said, oh, no, I really understand. He said, let me tell you what happened to me last week. He had a guy who was hanging sheetrock. The guy didn't drive his truck, and he was 4 boards short for completing the job.
Right.
Well, what do you think he did? When he didn't have the 4 boards, he left.
Really?
Right? Yeah. I don't have the sheetrock to finish, so there's nothing for me to do. I got to leave. Now, he leaves. He calls the guy, say, hey, man, y'all didn't have the 4 boards, so I left.
Wow.
Right? Next day, they had inspections. Mm-hmm. Well, they had to push the inspections off because it wasn't complete.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the time that the guy left. You're talking about 2 days of productivity because now you got to get the inspection guys to put you back on the schedule to come back out the next day. Like it shifts everything back, right? Because that's what I realize is that construction really is like a pyramid or a project. And if you don't put the right foundation down, then, it's just not going to work. Like you can't jump around.
That's a big problem you solved with it. So like when you you got the idea. Now like I'm figuring like Uber was out at the time, so you kind of you took that technology like because it's on demand, right? Taxi or whatever, but you kind of put it to
Uber is not what inspired me.
But how'd you come up to make it on demand?
Instacart.
Okay.
Instacart is what inspired me. Uber didn't inspire me as much.
So then you came up with the idea. Now, when you just in idea stage, because this question is to like a lot of entrepreneurs, even in this building, right? They're in idea stage, but you're bringing it. You brought it to life. You're positive revenue.
Yeah, so I think that's the only. I met with a guy today that was talking to me. He has a technology company and it's music based. And what I asked him was he generating any revenue? He said no. Mm-hmm. So for me I think that's the difference for me coming outside the space. I understand, excuse me, business a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And I think that you have to have some type of revenue and some path to profitability that really makes sense.
Absolutely. Like a monetization model.
Yeah, and Jimmy and I, president of Tommy Run, we always have our conversations back and forth because he says that everybody sits down, Bernard, and thinks they have a path to profitability. Right. And everybody has this rev model. But most people don't test it out until later on, right? And they want to get a bunch of users and that kind of stuff. Yeah. But we were a little bit different. And shout out for Jimmy because he actually pushed me to charge sooner.
Right.
Because there are a lot of similarities
for the service.
Yeah, because
you were going to do it for free or like.
Well, there are a lot of similarities between music to me and tech.
Okay.
Right, and specifically, I thought to get people to start using the app that we needed to give it to you for free so you can sample.
Absolutely.
It, right.
Start using it, like it.
Start liking it, yeah. Charge liking it, whole thing, right? Well, that's more like mixtapes. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm anti-mixtapes.
Right.
Right?
Straight to the album.
Well, not straight to the album. I'm saying it's like you do EPs, but you charge people.
Right.
Like, right, you give away a record. Mixtapes to us was different, right? Mixtapes were a compilation of a bunch of different people's singles.
Okay.
Now guys put out a mixtape of whole albums, which as you keep putting out music, then you train your customer that your music is free.
Right.
And I don't think that's the proper way to do that. And so we would always talk about that in the music business. So subsequently, I got challenged with that when having a conversation with Jimmy because, and even my partner BJ, what we all debated about was at what point would we start charging. Mm-hmm. So we introduced a project in July and we went free all of July. We didn't get one customer.
But you got signups.
Yeah, we got signups, but nobody actually
used it,
right? Wow. For real. Like everything that we were doing, it was like my friend beta test. He ordered light bulbs and had me drive to West Georgia, right? It's like, it's that kind of thing, people really, messing with you. The next month, August, we decided to charge and we started getting deliveries.
Nice.
Right. And so it was really good because what it did was it confirmed that the idea was worthy of somebody paying for it.
Because outside looking in, there's automatic value there, right? Because people going through what you went through when you were building that house, and then when you offer this service, it's a no-brainer.
Well, yeah, I think it's a no-brainer, but it's also, once again, coming from the outside looking in, it's a no-brainer, but it really is not that simple. because you're changing people's habits.
Right.
Right? Like I hate going to the grocery store. I've had Instacart, probably one of the first users of Instacart. I don't use it. Right? So it's still a habit change. I don't realize I don't need to use Instacart until I'm in the grocery store. I'm like, oh man, I should have ordered just through Instacart, right?
Yeah. Keep it
it was one of those things, right? You know, so changing people's habit was hard. And I didn't, you know, me and my partner BJ, we used to always talk about it because, oh, this is going to be easy. Everybody wants to do this. And Jimmy would always say, man, you do not understand. If you can just get somebody to download it, that's a huge win. Skip using it. Just get them to download it.
Yeah.
Wow. Never did I realize how hard that was.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, you know, going through that process, I mean, it was one of those things. So early on, what I think that was exciting was that we were able to confirm the fact that it was a valuable asset because people were paying for it early.
Okay. Are you able to give us any stats about Tommy Run today? Any company info you want to share?
When you say stats, I don't know.
Yes.
My guys keep up with a lot of those stats. I do round things. I can tell you that we've been doing 50% growth month over month, which we think is exceptional. You know, I think that we're blowing out a lot of people from that perspective. I saw, you know, one of my guys sent me one day this thing from Y Combinator, and they said that if you grew 5% a week in 4 years, you'd be doing about $24 million a month.
Nice.
And we've been growing probably at about 50%, which is roughly about 12 or 13% a week.
What about the future of Tommy Run? Like, or, you know, I know we just started 2018, but any plan?
Yeah, we plan on exposing ourselves and growing. We're getting ready to go to Charlotte. We're getting ready into Nashville.
So right now you're only in Atlanta?
We're only in Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah, we're only in Atlanta. But, you know, it's one of those things where we're trying to learn the market, understand, because it's a new space. There are a lot of things that we got to do that are going to be new. We think that we have a lot of new technology. We got some patent pending technology to keep a lot of the people who want to move into our space out of our space.
Okay.
So I think that, you know, it's going to be exciting. I mean, you know, I like the challenge.
I love it. I love the story. I love the idea. Can we like quickly talk about the grind, the hustle? Because, you know, like you said, you're a serial entrepreneur, but like a lot of people, you know, you're an entrepreneur. They think you're just gonna work 8 hours a day. No. You know, go home, eat eat dinner. Do it again.
My wife will tell you that just doesn't work, right?
Can you break down your daily schedule? Like what, like, you know, maybe even a specific year you went through to really, like, you know, just you put in the hustle, the grind, the amount of hours put into it.
Well, every year for me has been that, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I've been working hard, you know, for a long time, but I play hard. So, you know, I'm a little bit older now, and I'm looking for my exit within the next 2 years, 3 years, right? So where that won't be my interest. I'll be investing in things and helping, you know, the next generation of entrepreneurs. But for me, you know, it's been a constant battle. Like I've always been on the grind. I've always been moving. I'm always, you know, trying to figure out what's next. I tell a lot of people, you know, is that I follow the money and I follow the activity. I don't try to dictate it myself. And when I say that, I mean is, you know, every time that there's been a birth in the industry, here when we started, I mean, I never really said anything, but I was doing dry cleaners. But everybody at some point started doing these transportation business. I got into the transportation business. Then we moved, you know, Atlanta started moving towards the entertainment business for music. I moved into music, right? Yeah. And I traditionally move where things are actually happening. And so technology was the next, you know, phase of that for me, just understanding.
Making life easier. And whatever
making life easier, you know, solving problems and understanding. And, you know, for me, it's, you know, it's a product that doesn't have a opinion, right? I'm used to dealing with people that have opinions.
Just to get to know you a little bit more on a personal level, who are like 3 people that inspire you?
When you say that, first would be my father.
Okay.
So I mean, he's you know, he inspired me for everything, right? Then everything else kind of comes from there.
Okay. Any like right now, do you have specific music artists you're listening to, or who you really like, or like who's your favorite artist of all time?
Oh no, I can't do that.
Why not?
Because it don't
That's
work like
controversial.
that. Yeah, you know what I mean. And I mean, I don't think it's a favorite. Everybody feels a different void, right? And I always say, like in the music industry, there are very few artists that are the same, right? And so, like Jay and Tupac not Biggie, you know, Kendrick not neither one of them. Outkast is not none of those guys, and the Migos. I mean, you know what I'm saying. Everybody has their own lane. So what you do is that you are able to appreciate the variety. And each one have a different energy that they give you when you listen to them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Snoop Dogg gives you a completely different energy than Biggie.
Yeah, absolutely. Favorite restaurant?
Oh man, you asking
I'm a
me
big
tough
foodie,
questions.
so I always ask this question to people, like, you know, especially, you know, when you're local. Just kind of curious what people.
I'm all over the place, man. You know, like I really like Aria. Aria is a pretty cool ducked off spot that I like.
That's in Buckhead.
Yeah, that's in Buckhead. I like Aria a little bit, but you
I haven't tried that one yet.
Yeah, you should try that. That's good. I mean, it depends on what you're looking for, right? I mean, I go from, you know, S&S cafeteria to... So, you know, people laugh at me. You know, I got friends. You know, I mean, I'm not eating with you over there, right?
Sometimes you do get a craving.
Yeah, I like finger food. I like the dirty food, you know? Make sure your immune system good.
So this part of the show, it's basically like words of wisdom, right? Like as a serial entrepreneur, you've learned a thing or two, right? A lot of different experiences. You lived a colorful past. What's your best piece of advice you can give to aspiring entrepreneurs out there right now?
All business is the same. Learn the language.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that quote.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last question. What type of legacy you want to leave behind, and how do you want people to remember you as?
As a helpful person, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, I got a checkered, you know, appreciation. But what I would like for people to always know is that I was honest, that I work hard, and I try to help people. You know, I have a real soft spot for me. You know, my father was involved in the creation of minority participation. So
what did he do exactly?
Well, he worked with Maynard and them and coming up with laws and things that you know move the city in a very unique way, right? And so for me is that, you know, it's helping a generation of kids understand that value.
Okay, awesome. Well, Bernard, I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you, man.
Thank you for coming on the show. And you know I got some ideas for you, right?
Hey, man,
so,
always. I'm always open.
office?
Yeah, anytime, man.
All right. Thank you once again. Appreciate you
always.
coming.
Good.